Okay guys, I'm going to attempt to do another video. The audio on my laptop really sucked, so I'm trying to shoot this to an iPhone. Let's see how well it turns out. This is the Jersey Shore Guitar Garage Psycho Champ with the Psycho Champ mods that I discussed earlier in this thread. It has the 6L6 power tube instead of a 6V6. It does not have the cathode resistor changed. It has a PV Blue Marvel 3.2 ohm speaker, which allows us to get most of the power out of the power tube that is available, and this Psycho circuit. What this does, in a nutshell, is declamps the tone stack from throwing away any frequencies to ground. But it does it in a variable fashion by putting a 500K pot in as a variable resistor. That's the essence of the whole Psycho mod. It can be done to most amps. It just works really well on this little champ, and the reason being for the bigger power tube. We'll get into that in a minute. This was put together as a recording amp as a pair for our Psycho Strat wiring harness, and it works really well with this setup. Now that being said, this is a 1969 silver face Fender Champ. Nothing special about it, and you can do this to just about any of these old Champ circuits. First off, get rid of the 6V6 tube and replace it with a 6L6 tube. You can change the resistor on the cathode. It's not necessary. Without changing it, it'll have a little bit more sag and a little more breakup. It's what we were going for here. The all-important green power light. That's the most important knob or mod on the whole thing. And this variable circuit is what we're going to be concentrating on. Now, I have the amp set to 5s across the board and set all the way on 10 on my tones and volume on the neck pickup of this Strat. It's a Lace Emerald. It's about 5.7K, so it's not really that hot. And I am plugged into the number 1 position for my lower powered instrument. Anyways, let's get a little bit of a bass line. It's got that typical Champ kind of mid-scoopy, somewhat dirty sound. You know how Champs will do at half volume. And that's essentially what we're working with here is the stock Champ circuit, but sitting on that bigger power tube. Now, as we engage this Psycho circuit, and we do that by pulling out on the chicken head knob, this is a push-pull circuit, this starts to add from 0 to 500K resistance in between the resistor of the tone stack. This is important. When we pull this out and we engage the circuit, turned all the way down, it's still not changing anything. It's going to sound just like it did before. As we start to turn it up, it's going to start putting more resistance in between the tone stack resistor and ground, effectively clamping these frequencies that would normally get lost to ground. It's sending them right into the power tube, which can handle them now because it's bigger, and it's going to force that power tube to break up and distort. This is pretty much acting like a quarter of a 50-watt amp that's being driven to the walls. Watch how this works. You can hear it start to break up more as I turn it up louder, and it has a lot more saturation. That's power tube saturation. We're not touching the input tube with this circuit, so it's not a true clean channel, dirty channel for an amp. Basically what we're doing is taking out the frequencies that would normally get lost to ground with this circuit. But putting a push-pull is what makes it the clean and dirty channel. I'll show you what I mean. You can also turn that circuit on and off with a foot switch by putting a jack in the back of the amp, little 1/4-inch jack, and hooking it up to a regular on-off foot switch. Use a plastic jack because you don't want it shorting out to the chassis. That'll negate the circuit working at all. So let's take a look at how this is going to work when we start giving the input side a little more gain. Now, by turning the volume knob up, we're going to cause V1, or the 12AX7, to start overdriving. Get it up to around 7, 8, and it's going to have a nice input side saturation. Now, as we start to engage the psycho circuit, the power side will also start to break up. And we'll engage it all the way. We were able to measure 98 decibels coming out of this little champ. It's absolutely incredible. It keeps up with my PV Classic 50 on stage. If I don't watch where I have the volume set, this will actually drown it out. So let's work through the scales a little bit with a little mindless noodling. Please don't pick on my playing. This is just for demonstration purposes only. Now keep in mind, this whole time we've been on a neck single coil, a very light neck single coil. When you start hitting this guitar with, or when you start hitting the amp with more power from your guitar, it really gets out of control. I've got a lace red and silver as a humbucker in my bridge position. Let's see what'll happen when we really start hitting this thing. Pretty cool for a champ.